October 3, 2009, 5:58 a.m. Kamdesh District, Nuristan Province, Afghanistan. The air is thin and cold, carrying the scent of pine and dust. A pre-dawn silence hangs heavy over the remote, treacherous valleys of eastern Afghanistan. Perched precariously at the bottom of a bowl-shaped valley, surrounded on three sides by towering, tree-lined mountains, sits Combat Outpost Keating. It's a tiny, isolated American outpost, little more than a collection of HESCO barriers, sandbags, and plywood structures. Home to just 53 American soldiers from B Troop, 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division. Their mission: to engage with the local population, gather intelligence, and prevent the infiltration of Taliban and other insurgent fighters from Pakistan. Below them, the Kamdesh River snakes through the valley. Above them, the Hindu Kush Mountains loom, silent, brooding giants. It is a place of breathtaking, brutal beauty and strategic nightmare. The outpost is a death trap, its position a tactical blunder, exposed from every angle, dominated by the surrounding high ground. Staff Sergeant Clint Romeshaw, a burly, no-nonsense veteran, is on patrol outside the wire. Specialist Ty Carter, a quiet, methodical soldier, is observing his sector. They are weary, constantly on edge. Every rustle of leaves, every distant dog bark, is a potential threat. At precisely 6 a.m., the mountains explode. Hundreds of Taliban and other insurgent fighters, estimated to be between 300 and 400 strong, unleash a torrent of fire from all directions. Heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, mortars, and small arms rake the outpost. It is a perfectly synchronized, overwhelming assault. The camp is immediately engulfed in a storm of lead and fire. The sheer volume of fire is terrifying. It's not just an attack, it's an annihilation attempt. The outpost's flimsy defenses are instantly compromised. Buildings are shredded, vehicles explode, and soldiers are cut down in the opening seconds. The initial shock could have broken them, but it doesn't. In the midst of the chaos, surrounded, outnumbered almost 8-1, these 53 Americans will fight back. They will fight for 12 hours. They will fight for their lives, for their comrades, for a tiny patch of ground that, for one terrifying day, will become a crucible of unimaginable courage. This is the impossible battle of Combat Outpost Keating. To understand the desperate heroism of the men at Combat Outpost Keating, one must first grasp the unforgiving, brutal reality of their environment. Nuristan Province, eastern Afghanistan, a region often called the Land of Light for its stunning natural beauty, but for the soldiers stationed there, it was more often the Valley of Shadows. The province is characterized by its towering, jagged mountains, deep, narrow river valleys, and a terrain so unforgiving it seems to actively conspire against human presence. It's a border region, a porous frontier with Pakistan, making it a critical infiltration route for the Taliban and other insurgent groups seeking to destabilize Afghanistan. Combat Outpost Keating was established in 2006, part of a counterinsurgency strategy designed to dominate the border regions and engage with local populations. But its location, chosen by previous commanders, was a tactical nightmare. Situated at the bottom of a crescent-shaped valley, at an elevation of 5,500 feet, it was literally overlooked by higher ground on three sides. The surrounding mountains, rising to over 10,000 feet, provided perfect, commanding positions for enemy fighters. One Afghan elder famously warned, "You don't put a base in a hole." But there it was. Keating was not a fortified redoubt. It was a small, vulnerable collection of buildings, fortified by HESCO barriers and sandbags, overlooked by every ridge line, every peak. It was a shooting gallery, an obvious target. The soldiers often joked, grimly, that they were simply bait. The outpost was initially manned by a small contingent of Latvian soldiers, then U.S. Army units, with B Troop, 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division, taking over in May 2009. These were young men, mostly in their early 20s, from diverse backgrounds across America, now thrust into one of the most dangerous corners of the world. Their daily lives were a constant state of hypervigilance. Patrols were treacherous, often drawing sporadic fire. The heat in summer was oppressive, the cold in winter bone-chilling. Resupply was difficult, often requiring dangerous helicopter lifts. And always, the mountains watched. Staff Sergeant Clint Romeshaw, 28 years old, from Lake City, California, was a veteran of 2 previous deployments to Iraq. Burly, with a commanding presence and a no-nonsense attitude, he was a natural leader, respected by his men. He knew combat. He knew the cost of war. He also knew a bad position when he saw one. Specialist Ty Carter, 29, from Antioch, California, was a quieter, more introspective soldier. An accomplished skateboarder and musician before joining the army, he brought a methodical calmness to his duties. He was a rifleman, acutely aware of his surroundings, always observing, always learning. Every soldier at Keating understood the inherent vulnerability of their position. They had pleaded for better defenses, for a more defensible location. But bureaucratic inertia, a shifting strategy, and the harsh realities of remote logistics meant they were stuck. They built what they could, reinforced what they had, and prepared for the inevitable. They just didn't know how complete the enemy's preparation would be. The weeks leading up to October 3, 2009, were filled with ominous signs. Intelligence reports, fragmentary but persistent, indicated a significant buildup of insurgent forces in the surrounding valleys. Locals reported unusual movements. Patrols encountered increased hostile activity. The Taliban leadership, particularly a notoriously brutal commander named Abdul Rahman, was determined to overrun COP Keating. They saw it not just as a military target, but as a symbolic victory, a chance to demonstrate their strength and drive the Americans out of their heartland. The American command structure was aware of the threats. There were debates at higher levels about closing COP Keating down, about the inherent risks of its location. But the outpost, despite its tactical disadvantages, served a strategic purpose. It denied the enemy free movement, gathered intelligence, and maintained a presence in a critical area. So, for the time being, it remained open. The soldiers at Keating felt the pressure mounting. They conducted more aggressive patrols, trying to disrupt any enemy buildup. They dug in deeper, reinforcing their HESCO barriers with more earth, building more fighting positions. They practiced their defense plans relentlessly, knowing that their survival depended on flawless execution and unbreakable resolve. On the eve of October 3rd, the air was unusually still. The silence felt heavy, pregnant with expectation. Staff Sergeant Romshaw, always restless, conducted a final perimeter check. Specialist Carter, vigilant in his observation post, scanned the tree limbs. The men tried to get what little sleep they could, their rifles always within reach. The enemy, meanwhile, was meticulously positioning hundreds of fighters. This was not a random attack. It was a carefully planned, coordinated assault, months in the making. Fighters from various factions, Taliban, Hezb Islami Gabudin, and other local insurgent groups, had united for this single monumental operation. They knew Keating's weaknesses. They had studied its defenses. They had brought heavy weapons, DSHK heavy machine guns, RPGs, mortars, and hundreds of skilled riflemen. They surrounded the outpost in the dead of night, moving silently through the dense foliage, taking up positions on the high ground, in the tree lanes, and even within the small, abandoned Kamdesh village below the camp. They established interlocking fields of fire, ensuring that every inch of the outpost would be raked by a torrent of lead. As the first sliver of false dawn began to appear over the Hindu Kush, illuminating the snow-capped peaks in the distance, the insurgents were ready. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their intent was clear: overrun the outpost, kill every American soldier, and claim a decisive victory. The 53 Americans below were about to face an enemy force nearly 8 times their size, attacking from every conceivable angle. October 3rd, 2009, 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes before 6 a.m. The air at Combat Outpost Keating is biting cold. A few soldiers are awake, preparing for the day's duties, or standing guard. Staff Sergeant Romshaw is finishing up an exterior patrol. Specialist Carter is in his observation post, his eyes scanning the tree lanes, peering into the gloom of pre-dawn. The low hum of the camp's generators is the only mechanical sound. Then, at precisely 6 a.m., the world explodes. The mountains erupt in a thunderous roar. Hundreds of machine guns, sniper rifles, and AK-47s open fire simultaneously. Rocket-propelled grenades scream through the air, detonating with earth-shattering force against HESCO barriers, plywood buildings, and vehicles. Mortar rounds whistle down from the sky, impacting inside the wire, sending geysers of dirt and shrapnel into the air. The sheer volume of fire is almost beyond comprehension. It's an apocalyptic storm of lead and fire, coming from every direction. The camp is instantly, violently engulfed. The initial shock is devastating. The insurgents have achieved complete surprise and overwhelming firepower. Their opening salvo is designed not just to attack, but to annihilate. B Troop, 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, is immediately plunged into a desperate fight for survival. Soldiers are thrown from their bunks. Plywood walls are shredded by bullets. Vehicles explode. Communication lines are cut. The camp's generators are destroyed, plunging parts of the outpost into darkness, compounding the confusion. In the first few minutes, the camp is overrun from multiple points. Insurgents, bold and determined, stream through gaps in the perimeter, pushing past hastily erected defenses. They infiltrate the outer barracks, the mortar pit, and several observation posts. The American soldiers, disoriented by the intensity of the assault, fight back from whatever cover they can find. Sergeant Justin Gallegos, manning an observation post, is one of the first casualties, killed almost instantly by a sniper. Specialist Stephen Mace, 21, is shot in both legs by an enemy sniper, severely wounded and unable to move. Casualties mount quickly. Staff Sergeant Rome Shaw, caught in the open during his patrol, immediately rushes back towards the heaviest fighting. He sees the mortar pit being overrun, his comrades engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat. He sees the flagpole, a symbol of American presence, riddled with bullets. Specialist Carter, in his observation post, is directly in the path of the onslaught. His position is raked with fire. He returns fire, his rifle spitting tracers into the dark, trying to suppress the waves of attackers. His world has shrunk to the muzzle of his rifle, the ringing in his ears, and the desperate need to survive. The men of COP Keating are not just fighting, they are fighting for their very existence, against an enemy determined to wipe them off the map. This is no longer a patrol, no longer a skirmish. This is war, raw and unfiltered, crashing down on them from all sides. Amidst the furious close-quarters combat, acts of individual heroism emerge, shining like beacons in the smoke and fire. Specialist Ty Carter's actions during this initial assault are a testament to the profound bond between soldiers. As the insurgents pushed deeper into the camp, the casualties mounted. Specialist Stephen Mace, shot twice in the legs, lay exposed and bleeding in the open ground near the barracks. His cries for help were faint against the roar of battle. The area was swept by relentless enemy fire, making any rescue attempt suicidal. Ty Carter, in his observation post, saw Mace go down. He also saw another comrade, Sergeant Bradley Larson, fall under heavy fire while trying to reinforce a position. With complete disregard for his own safety, and under a hail of bullets and RPGs, Carter repeatedly left the relative cover of his position. He crawled through the open, a terrifying act of selflessness, trying to reach Mace. He provided covering fire for others, suppressing enemy positions, buying crucial seconds. He located and treated Mace's wounds, applying a tourniquet under direct fire. He then had to move Mace, a heavy, severely wounded man, across open ground to a more secure location. It was an agonizing, bullet-riddled struggle, a testament to pure grit and determination. He carried Mace, shielded him with his own body, and eventually brought him to a small, relatively safer aid station inside the wire. But Carter was not finished. He returned to the open again and again, under intense enemy fire, to recover ammunition from fallen comrades. He moved to another injured soldier, Private First Class Kevin Thompson, also severely wounded. He provided aid, gave him water, and again shielded him with his body. His actions were a relentless cycle of self-sacrifice. Provide suppressive fire, move wounded, resupply, repeat. He moved through a landscape of death, facing an enemy that was actively trying to kill him, driven only by the imperative to save his comrades. Meanwhile, Rome Shaw and his team continued their desperate counterattack. They managed to push the insurgents back from the mortar pit and a key generator, securing vital assets. But the enemy was still inside the wire, holding critical positions like the aid station and the command post, effectively cutting the camp in two. The fate of many wounded soldiers depended on these contested buildings. The battle raged for hours. Ammunition ran dangerously low. Water was scarce. The wounded lay bleeding, their pleas adding to the horrific symphony of war. The men of COP Keating were fighting not just for their lives, but for their very humanity, against an enemy that sought to deny them both. As the hours dragged on, the situation at COP Keating remained dire. The Americans, though fighting with extraordinary courage, were severely outnumbered and still facing a relentless assault from multiple directions. Casualties continued to mount. The insurgents had infiltrated deeply, occupying several buildings within the camp. Their only hope, their desperate lifeline, was air support. But the terrain of Nuristan, with its towering mountains and deep valleys, made air support incredibly challenging. Aircraft had to fly low, making them vulnerable to insurgent fire. And the fog of war, the sheer confusion on the ground, made identifying enemy positions from the air exceedingly difficult, risking friendly fire. However, the courage of the airmen who responded was as profound as that of the ground troops. Apache gunships, F-15 fighter jets, and ultimately, AB-1 bomber answered the desperate calls for help. They arrived, often flying through heavy small arms and anti-aircraft fire, unleashing their formidable payloads. The Apaches, flying daringly low, provided precision fire, targeting insurgent machine gun nests and RPG teams on the high ground. Their cannon fire and rockets began to suppress the enemy, slowly, painstakingly, breaking the relentless assault. The F-15s dropped precision-guided bombs, leveling enemy fighting positions that had been raining death down on the outpost. Staff Sergeant Rome Shah, still leading from the front, coordinated with the air assets, marking enemy positions, guiding the pilots to their targets, even as bullets cracked around him. He used whatever he could, smoke grenades, tracer rounds, to direct the overwhelming power of the air support. These airstrikes were crucial. They inflicted heavy casualties on the enemy, forcing them to pull back from some of their most advantageous positions. The insurgents, who had initially believed they were on the verge of victory, suddenly found themselves pounded from above. However, the enemy was tenacious. They continued to fight from entrenched positions, even as their numbers dwindled. The immediate threat of the outpost being completely overrun began to recede, but the fight for control of the camp was far from over. Insurgents still held buildings inside the wire, including the aid station, a crucial area for the wounded. The battle for COP Keating was entering its desperate, bloody final phases. By midday, after more than 6 hours of continuous, brutal combat, the tide had slowly begun to turn, thanks to the relentless air support and the unbreakable will of the American defenders. But crucial parts of the camp remained in enemy hands. The aid station, the nerve center for treating the wounded, was still occupied, and the communications building, vital for coordinating further support, was heavily contested. Staff Sergeant Clint Rome Shah, seeing the opportunity, launched a final, decisive counterattack. He assembled a small, determined team, including Specialist Carter, who, despite his own exhaustion and having just recovered another fallen comrade, was ready to rejoin the fight. Rome Shah, leading the charge, methodically cleared building by building, pushing the remaining insurgents out of the camp. He moved with a brutal efficiency, throwing grenades into enemy-occupied structures, engaging targets at close range with his rifle. He disregarded incoming fire, focusing solely on reclaiming their ground. His actions were nothing short of legendary. He rallied his exhausted men, providing leadership and inspiration when many would have simply given up. He directed suppressive fire, coordinated movements, and personally engaged the enemy in ferocious close-quarters combat. Specialist Carter, despite being utterly exhausted and having been exposed to enemy fire countless times, continued to provide critical support. He laid down suppressing fire, helped move equipment, and ensured his comrades had cover. His unwavering resolve, even after enduring hours of hell, was a testament to his own extraordinary courage. Together, Rome Shah and his team systematically cleared the occupied sections of the camp. They pushed the insurgents out of the aid station, securing it for the wounded. They retook the communications building, re-establishing vital contact with higher command. By the late afternoon, the main insurgent assault had finally been broken. The enemy, having suffered heavy casualties from both ground fire and airstrikes, began to retreat back into the mountains from which they had descended. They had failed to overrun COP Keating, but the cost was immense. 8 American soldiers lay dead. Many more were severely wounded. The camp was a smoking ruin, riddled with bullet holes, shrapnel, and the grim reality of intense combat. The victory was hard won, paid for in blood, and etched into the souls of every survivor. As the last of the enemy fire faded into the mountains by late afternoon, a haunting silence descended upon Combat Outpost Keating. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the stench of gunpowder and blood. The outpost, once a small collection of buildings, was now a shattered wreck. Buildings were torn apart, vehicles incinerated, and the ground was littered with spent casings, shrapnel, and the bodies of fallen comrades and enemy fighters. The immediate aftermath was a blur of frantic activity. Medics, themselves often wounded, worked tirelessly to treat the injured. They moved from soldier to soldier, applying tourniquets, stabilizing wounds, doing everything they could to save lives. The severity of the casualties was immense. 22 soldiers were wounded, many critically. The most urgent task was the medical evacuation of the wounded and the recovery of the fallen. Helicopters, braving the still dangerous airspace, began to arrive, ferrying the injured out to advanced medical facilities. The sight of their comrades, wrapped in blankets and loaded onto stretchers, was a stark reminder of the cost of their victory. 8 brave American soldiers had made the ultimate sacrifice. Staff Sergeant Justin Gallegos, Sergeant Christopher Griffin, Specialist Stephen Mace, Specialist Michael Scusa, Specialist Kevin Thompson, Private First Class Kevin Courtney, Private First Class Zachary Cuddeback, and Sergeant Joshua Kirk. Their names would forever be etched in the hearts of their comrades and in the annals of military history. The men of B Troop, exhausted, traumatized, but unbroken, spent the night securing their shattered camp, pulling guard shifts, and recounting the horrors they had just endured. They had held their ground, defying impossible odds, but the experience had forever altered them. In the days that followed, the decision was made to finally close Combat Outpost Keating. The tactical vulnerability, so brutally exposed on October 3rd, was undeniable. The outpost was systematically dismantled, stripped of its equipment, and eventually abandoned, its ghosts left to the unforgiving mountains. But the story of their courage resonated far beyond the valleys of Nuristan. The actions of the men at COP Keating became a testament to individual bravery, leadership under fire, and the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. The heroism displayed at Combat Outpost Keating did not go unnoticed. The stories of valor, self-sacrifice, and unwavering determination began to emerge, slowly, painstakingly, from the survivors' accounts. In 2011, Specialist Ty Carter was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. His citation highlighted his relentless courage, repeatedly exposing himself to enemy fire to resupply ammunition, move wounded comrades, and provide aid, all while engaging the enemy. Carter's quiet humility masked an incredible inner strength that shone brightly in the darkest hours. In 2013, Staff Sergeant Clint Romeshaw was also awarded the Medal of Honor. His citation detailed his ferocious leadership, his decisive counterattacks, his rallying of his men, and his repeated acts of extraordinary valor in retaking critical positions and inspiring his comrades to fight beyond exhaustion. Romeshaw's aggressive, unwavering actions were pivotal in preventing the outpost from being completely overrun. Both Romeshaw and Carter, along with many other members of B Troop, also received numerous other commendations for their actions at COP Keating, including Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, and Purple Hearts. Their stories became enshrined in military lore, taught as examples of courage, initiative, and the will to fight. The Battle of COP Keating stands as one of the most intense and brutal engagements of the Afghanistan War. It's a sobering reminder of the costs of war, the tactical complexities of counterinsurgency, and the profound bravery of the soldiers who serve in harm's way. It's a story of how a small group of Americans, placed in a tactically indefensible position, faced an overwhelming enemy force and, through sheer grit and an unbreakable spirit, refused to be defeated. It is a tribute to the 8 fallen heroes, and to all the survivors, who carried the burden of that day for the rest of their lives. Their story is a powerful testament to the fact that even when hopelessly outnumbered, even when surrounded by an enemy determined to destroy them, the human spirit, fueled by camaraderie and an unyielding will to survive, can achieve the impossible. The mountains of Nuristan still stand, silent and imposing. But forever etched into their memory, and into the annals of history, is the impossible battle of Combat Outpost Keating, where 53 men fought like 400 and held their ground.